Raffaello? What's happening is you're watching OK Banger.
Now with organic acoustic music. As the intro played.
Yeah, Takes Town. That's where we're going.
Played by Cameron himself.
Cameron himself.
What's an original music pick you have?
Original music take? That I think that like music is better than it's ever been before. Like in terms of, I mean, maybe this isn't original, but like in terms of actual musicianship and skill, the bar for like being the average musician on the internet is 10 times, maybe 100 times higher than it was 20 years ago. Because obviously internet did exist 20 years ago. Yikes. Say 40 years ago. Like you had good musicians in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, but they were like much fewer and further between. And so like, I guess the original part of the take is the only thing that matters for a musician, not the only thing, but like being an incredibly technical musician is way less interesting today. Like it is the least interesting time in history to be an extremely technical musician because there's so many other people that can also play and also freaking robots. And so like the only thing that really matters is your taste in what you're putting out into the world, because that's going to be a differentiated sound as opposed to you being able to play an extremely technical piece effectively. The caveat is that the more technical you are, the more techniques you have access to potentially express yourself. So that's how you get like the Polyphias of the world that are extremely technical and unique sounding. But like broadly, it's not enough to just be extremely technical as a musician. Like that used to be a thing, like Buckethead, if there's any guitarists in the fan, like it's kind of known for just being the ultra technical guitarist. And it's just not really, it's not enough anymore. In fact, it's almost better to not be as technical because then you kind of play stuff that's you. In some ways it's better. And so you just play you as opposed to trying to emulate something that like a bunch of people or a good amount of people can do. But I don't know. Maybe that's completely wrong. Who knows? What's up, Priyanka? What's up, Mikado?
Buckethead is the guy who wears the KFC fried chicken bucket on his head, right?
He is in fact the guy that wears the bucket on his head. It's a good nom de plume.
I guess my add-on take is that you have to wear a KFC bucket on your head, right? Like
maybe when they sponsor us. Maybe when they sponsor us.
Yes, we will wear a bucket. That doesn't seem very healthy.
Not for your skin, no.
No, and I don't know. I prefer crispy, crunchy chicken. Do you have that in your area?
Is that a brand name or a description of a type of chicken?
It's a brand name. No,
we don't have a crispy, crunchy chicken. It sounds like an Uber
with K's.
That's a lot of K's. That is in fact maybe
a number of K's.
That is a risky number of K's.
And it's a franchise normally found in gas stations. So like,
actually we do have one. I tried to go to one, and then we realized it was in a gas station. I was like, I'm not feeling gas station chicken right now.
No, but it has nothing to do with the gas station. It's usually like they rent
it is in the gas station. By definition, it has something to do with the gas station.
But
that's my take for today. If it's in a gas station and it's related to gas station,
with the hot dogs on the roller, okay, that's been there for like 10,000 years. That's like a whole separate concessionary system.
I was holding this like a mic just now, so that you were aware of that. And don't you be crushing on don't. My Quick Trip hot dogs are sacred.
Oh, I was like, I was trying to make a Simpsons reference, but I realized that you would have taken it very a great offense as to my insult of the roller hot dogs. So
Krista,
like KKC.
I just spilled my coffee all over my desk. This is a bad day. I can't even move the camera to show you because I spent so long to set it up, but this is bad.
Oh, well, it's okay. I asked Cameron for more comedy in the beginning of the show, so you're just providing some
so sad.
Like, what do you call it? Like pratfalls?
Yeah, I don't know. Sorry, let's just talk about takes so that I don't have to think about cleaning this up in an hour.
Oh, okay.
God.
Well, my take is that like nowadays you have to be like a Lady Gaga type to be famous, right? Like kind of like how Chappell Rowan, like Lady Gaga, like people did not pay the relatively amount of attention until they started doing like big drag makeup and like
Yeah.
there's a whole lot of accessorizing and the lore building that goes around that allows them to have people noticing whatever they're doing. So I
Yeah, I
feel like
mean,
it's the same way for
it's
takes. It's like takes on their own are not as impactful as them making sense within the context or universe of you as a being.
yeah, it's an attention and dopamine arms race in every facet of content, but like just people in general too. It's spilled over to real life.
Mm-hmm. At least you're
Like,
wearing a brown sweater.
what does that have to do with anything?
Oh, like your coffee spill.
No, okay. So have you ever had these little like coffee pads, pads,
Oh,
little?
those are Maxims. Oh my
Yeah,
god,
yeah,
are you
yeah.
drinking little Maxims?
Yes.
Okay,
We
that's Asian points.
Thank you. The one of my soldiers in my platoon in Afghanistan had brought a bunch, and
Mm-hmm.
so like we had
It
this
is
instant
probably the
coffee.
best instant coffee. Like
Yes,
there
yes,
is.
hands down. And
Maxim,
all
please
of
sponsor us.
please,
Korean coffee brand happens to be watching.
that'll be sick. But so all of the crystal, probably 30% of a packet of the crystals are on my desk right now, and I'm
Okay,
unhappy
that's not
with
too
that.
bad. I was afraid it was actually liquid coffee,
No,
but it does suck because I guess you wanted to actually drink it.
yes, I did. I waited until the camera was on
Mm-hmm.
to do it so that there'd be something visually interesting, and I just fully beefed it. Fully beefed it.
All
I'm
right.
trying to herd it to a corner of my desk so I can maybe get the rest of it in.
Mm-hmm.
But I actually, maybe I'll post a picture of this later, but like I bought a giant mouse pad for the entire desk because I kept running out of space on the mouse pad for the FPS thing that I'm doing, which is another thing that I'm drowning in. And so now I just have like crushed up ground coffee powder in this giant mouse pad thing.
That surely will be great for your FPS. Your mouse won't be confused at all. It's okay. Now you have a thing to blame when you miss and get shot and turning back into a little Meebo.
Oh yeah, the little figurines. Yeah. Okay, sorry. I'm trying to get it so I don't actually spill all. I'm gonna have to vacuum this. There's no saving this. This is a disaster area. Okay.
So
takes.
Chad, I feel like the coffee thing is a great like experimental ground for takes, right? Because I feel like coffee, tea, that kind of thing, like everyone has a very strong opinion about it because it is a very accessible thing to talk about. And so like one of the most controversial things is like instant coffee, whether it is good or not.
Okay. Say more.
So and I feel like I went a full circle. This is kind of like the mid-wit meme sort of situation where like in the beginning you're like, Nescafe Classico is bad. And then you go into your fancy machine era, which I totally did. I went through my pour over and like grinding my own beans era.
I mean, nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that, right? But then now I've kind of like downgraded back into my version of the Nescafe Classico, which is the Nespresso machine era.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I like dirt coffee. So this isn't the worst. Like this is, I managed to scrape a bunch of it into here, so we're okay. The room is a disaster. It is completely derailed the 30 minutes after this show, just so you're aware. So I sacrificed for
we
this
were
show.
chatting about how this is proof that this is not an AI generated podcast because there's no
because it's bad in some spots. I like instant coffee because I think half of the experience of coffee is the shock to your mouth of like sludge. But it's because I have Stockholm syndrome where like I didn't really drink coffee growing up. I wasn't like I grew up in Georgia. I drank Monster, like right. I was in the quasi.
Were you born as a baby and then there's an IV drip of Monster immediately to
No,
your veins?
they actually gift you a case the first time you walk into a Walmart.
Okay.
Yeah, no, but so like my energy experience is White Monster at 2 a.m. in Walmart parking lots. But the Army knows how dehydrating energy drinks are for you, so they don't provide them except under very specific circumstances. The Army does actually have specific energy drinks called Rippets. Shout out Rippets.
What?
Yeah. I mean, it's not Army energy drink. It is like a contracted thing that the Army got some kind of contract with. But it's like, I'm pretty sure it's one of those Southeast Asian energy drinks where it's like actually probably something pretty bad for you in it. But it woke you the fuck up. The Delmar, there's tons of AI generated podcasts now. Like be on the lookout. You're going to hear a lot, like here are the telltale signs. When you hear somebody go like, huh, oh yeah, definitely. Oh, yeah. Like a lot of those filler noises, when you start hearing those a lot more than you expect, that's a probably AI generated or AI supplemented.
And then like they're really still, and then like nothing else is moving except their mouth, just like this. Well, no matter what they say.
Yeah,
I think that will improve in like 2 seconds.
Yeah, audio wise, it's really hard to tell if you're not looking at the video. Audio is kind of getting there.
Well, I see that like Priyanka agrees with you. Instant coffee is instant gratification, so the delivery method is the most efficient.
Do you like cooking, Kristen?
I do.
I'm jealous.
Why?
So I've been thinking about this a lot because I'm trying to manage what I put into my body.
All right. Can we disclose what we're trying to do?
Well, I mean, I don't think that's crazy. I think anybody that over the age of 30 is somewhat being cognizant of like what they put into their body. They're either like, oh, I gained more weight than I intended to or whatever. We can have takes on body positivity if you want some clips.
Healthy phase. Wink, wink.
It's not a phase. We just have to be healthier. We die. Like it can't be a phase anymore. We're too old to have health phases.
Fine. We're having a health phase for the rest of our lives. No. What a disclosure.
No, we're in our health era. But anyway, but I enjoy high quality food. Like I didn't eat. I would say I haven't eaten a high quality like Michelin star kind of like I didn't eat one of those until my late 20s. Right when I got into business school, and I had business school friends who that's what they've been freaking doing their whole life, and so we'd go to that kind of thing with them, and so I had fancy, I don't know, like fancy whipped cream. I don't like what. How do you even describe Michelin star food? It's just like normal food but smaller and fancy.
Yeah.
like you take a thing, you turn it into a puree, and it some parts of it taste better. But anyway, so like I had Michelin star food. I can appreciate it. There's some things that I've eaten. I'm like, oh wow, this is the best, hamon I've ever had or whatever. But like, I don't really like it that much more than chicken tenders, like frozen chicken tenders, right? It's so like in my house, it's kind of the same thing where I'm like, okay, I'm going to make some food. I could go get the ingredients. I could find a recipe, probably in a different order than I just said. And then I could make spend 30 minutes making the thing. But if I just make a bowl of instant like Velveeta mac and cheese and put a shredded rotisserie chicken into it, I get roughly the same amount of enjoyment out of the food. Correct. And so I'm in this spot of like, oh, I'd like to elevate my daily meals, but also I'm cool with bowls of protein slop.
Well, you can continue to make your bowls of protein slop. Like that's why I linked you to Remington James cookbook specifically, because all his recipes are about like Velveeta cheese, mac and cheese.
But I was looking at it and still it was a lot.
Is it too many ingredients and too much measuring?
Not as strong as I like it.
Yeah, because half the crystals are embedded in the mouse pad.
Don't rub it in. Oh, the chat is on this
The chat
AI
is all about
podcast thing.
Notebook LM and
Y'all,
it's really
stop talking about AI
powerful.
podcasts. You're gonna run us out of business, and we don't even have a business yet. The I don't know, Kristen. I think it's just kind of a. I already feel like I don't have enough time to do the things that
That's
I
why
want
I
to do.
was thinking that you should. We're not sponsored by you. Maybe like Trifecta or like HelloFresh is actually a great idea.
I've done HelloFresh, and yes, it's less work than going to the store, but it's still 30 minutes of prep.
It is. It is. It's still too much time. So, like, have you tried Factor meals?
I have, and it's gross.
It's gross.
It's gross.
Airline food.
Yeah.
Delivered. But I don't know. I feel like you can't expect healthy food to taste as good. Has Mike Israetel not hammered that into you?
No, I know that. Like, I know that's true. But okay, so actually, there's a difference because there's the go and pick up Wendy's every night version of it, right? And then there's the rotisserie chicken and mac and cheese, which is like, if you have reasonable portions with it, is, I would say, a lot healthier than a Wendy's pickup every night.
Yes.
And so, like,
but then your portion control, once you do the calculations, you'll be like, this is a very small bowl of mac and cheese.
I mean, not for me. I'm a dude, and I generally lift pretty heavy, so I don't have to be as crazy with portion control.
Oh, okay. You're not in my sad calorie control diet. Jealous.
Chat, I'm trying to convince Kristen to just put up numbers with weight. I think that'd be fun.
I am not doing that.
Just yoked Kristen Arc 2025.
Okay, I'm just gonna say it. You can be a muscle mommy. And
you could.
Like, I do not want to be a muscle mommy.
Sometimes you choose your life, and sometimes life chooses you, Kristen.
Well,
and that's all I'm gonna say about that.
I know. I can never be one of those like skinny K-pop girls. So it is true that the next best thing is being a muscle mommy. And like the sad part is that my brother is actually super jacked. So I can't even blame genetics because I probably have the same genes.
I ain't saying, but I'm saying, you know what I mean?
Yes. But in order for me to reveal my muscle mommy look, I need to lose the body fat covering the muscles first. So
not as much as you think.
Cycle.
I think it's more attainable than you think. It's also fine to do what you want with your body.
Yeah.
All right. So chat catch up. Tutorizer AI restaurants are next. Hopefully, but also that kind of sucks because actually there's an interesting thing I read about restaurants about basically the economics of restaurants never really worked, but they work even less now because the only ones that kind of survived the COVID culling were, I guess, delivery, like millennial were like what?
Oh, delivery, fast casual.
So fast casual, but also kind of like overpriced millennial places where they have like a burger that's like the badass burger and it's like a $30 burger that's just a normal burger, because those are the only ones that have the margins to sustain it.
Why is that millennial, not Gen Z? I feel insulted.
Because millennials were the ones that jumped on the whole like 2015 onward trend of like it's the same thing as that, like the self-help book.
It's actually a Guy Fieri thing, which is very millennial.
Yeah, but what's that self-help book where it's like the has a big there's like a whole trend of self-help books being like rebellious of like go screw yourself and like other rules for your life or whatever. I don't know. Tutorizer.
Mark Ronson, the
I'm pretty sure
not giving up something.
Yeah, subtle art of not giving a the
sad censoring. Oh, and then folks, I'm actually missing what you're drinking, so you gotta give a recap.
So this is the source of my pain. It is Maxim Magazine's coffee. Just kidding, it's not, but it is Maxim. It's like Korean instant coffee brand. It's very good. I had it when I was deployed, and you just throw it in one of these bad boys, and you can destroy the environment in 2 plastic containers at once. It's pretty cool.
Yes, and then like 75% of the crystals went into the mouse pad.
Yeah, I fully missed the opening of this thing because I was like having such a great time on this show, and my entire desk is covered with coffee dust, and I'm pretty sad about it, if I'm being completely honest.
So hot takes. It seems like we do have a lot to talk about when it comes to food and drinks.
I mean, let's maybe we do
I
the
think health is
trademark.
probably one of the biggest like hot takes area, right? Because as
Yep.
someone who's trying to launch a health thing, I get into my like doom scrolling of like, oh my god, there's like 1,000 experts who are all claiming that they know this new thing that you didn't know. Or like, oh, actually, you know what's even worse? The ones who are board certified medical doctors who go, I don't want to gatekeep this skin cream from you.
Well, okay, so Kristen, we've both gone down the content rabbit hole, and if
Mhm.
anybody like hasn't, although most of our audience has totally gone down the rabbit hole,
Mhm.
there are compilations and lists and mountains of hooks
Mhm.
that like people sell a lot of the time.
Yeah, you can buy libraries of these.
But like they're like, oh, if you want to get people to listen to your take, start it with, I'm not going to gatekeep this health secret,
Yeah.
blah blah blah, whatever. And the annoying part about it is it works. You can
Right, it does work.
you
Yeah.
you can see yourself scrolling, and then you hear
Mhm.
somebody roll into one of these talk, like I call them talk tracks, because that's like what I did as like a sales dude. And you start rolling into a talk track, and he's just like these are my 3 tips, and the last one is my favorite, and then says the
Mhm.
thing,
Mhm.
and you know they say the last one's your favorite so they can increase your dwell time on the video so that more
Mhm.
people watch it,
Mhm.
and I hate it.
Exactly. So
I
I feel
hate
like
it, but
what I
it's
wanna
real
help
and it
people
works.
do is to bypass all of this because not only is there like a library of like these hooks, but they are all getting a source of information. That's why a lot of these folks talk about the exact same health tip. And it's sort of like just like trading alpha. Like by the time there's an Instagram like stupid hook video about it, it's actually already not that alpha anymore. So I
Yeah, I
feel
mean,
like what I
especially on
want to do is
Instagram.
skip all of that.
Millennials.
I know. Okay, yes, yes. By the time like I watch on Instagram, it's already been garbage slop. That's secondary.
Yeah,
To TikTok.
you're consuming the pig slop that fell out of the
Right,
trough
right.
onto the ground.
Exactly. So the original source of this, if they are even bothering to be pretending to be scientific, is a peer-reviewed published journal. So like
Mm,
when I was a scientist, like you would actually get these like table of contents. Like in the old school ways, you would get like a paper printed like actual table of contents of like all the latest papers that published.
yeah,
And then you would
that's
go through
crazy.
that and see what's new out there. But now with AI, it's like theoretically anyone can have access to the latest like information for whatever they are interested in.
Yeah, but also I just think we can skip all of that and just make things up. That's what the internet's doing right now.
That is true. Though what's really interesting is that there's also this ecosystem, which is where one influencer would claim to be more scientific than another and like do takedowns. And then they
Yeah,
would make like some comedy out of like the takedowns as well.
yeah.
So there's a whole like content farm that you can do based on that, right? But I
I
think
mean,
like what I think we need to question is like, isn't it weird that everyone always has a new thing to share every single week? And I just imagine like that typical like health content influencer track is like you gotta like have something to say every single week, no matter whether there is something new to say. It becomes like a 24-hour news cycle thing just about like health stuff. And I feel like that creates the additional confusion, right? Of like, well, isn't it weird that like there's nothing Lindy and everything is always new and there's always a gotcha? So and I think that's because it's not sexy to talk about what works all the time, right? Like calories in, calories out, that kind of thing. Like it goes through cycles of like we got to do the carnivore diet, and then like eventually swings back into like Seco, that kind of thing. So I feel like I want to help people like extract out the takes that have been the most Lindy.
but that's boring.
Right. So how can we make what's Lindy interesting? And I think
I don't think
that's where most influencers can access your personal life, hopefully. And like because of the nature of broadcasting, like there is a level of customization we need to do, right? Like, we can talk about Seco all day, which is calories in, calories out. But if I know that Cameron only wants to eat Velveeta mac and cheese and rotisserie chicken,
slander, but I'll allow it.
then how do we adapt that into what you actually want to eat? And like that's where luckily for now the AI influencers are not that good yet. I'm sure like in like maybe in less than a year they can do that. But that's where I want to help people explore.
Interesting. Sorry, I got distracted. There's a cardinal outside my window, and it's very pretty.
This is what Cameron, like a few minutes before we started, was like. I was like, blah blah blah, and he was like, "Oh, there's a vulture outside of my window."
There was a vulture outside my window, and he caught a thermal. It was pretty cool.
Oh, okay, fine.
The okay, so
another window besides the one behind you, then?
Yes, that's why I have this beautiful light. It's supplemented by my ring light, but like it basically has daylight here. Okay, but so like, what do we do on OK Banger? We take normal takes and then we put meta takes on top of it because we like hearing ourselves talk. So before we get more into health
for
takes,
yourself,
I mean, okay, the the thing that we're talking about is kind of it's actually, I posted about this the other day and I didn't plan this, but since everything is so disposable and we don't really have a consistency of time and scrutiny to compare takes from day to day, right? Because we just are spending the day discovering the new take versus evaluating takes in general. We have this landscape of disposable takes, which like if all you have are disposable takes, you need to make more disposable takes. And it's very, very hard, maybe impossible, to be building like your gallery of pretty lindy, consistent, longitudinal, whatever word you want to use. Like it's really hard to build the gallery nice of evergreen takes. Yeah.
Yeah, that someone has on their Substack that I'm still jealous of.
I mean, some of them are good. Substack.com. WYSR.xyz. How are we doing this evergreen thing, right? Because I mean, we talk a big game, but are we doing it
ourselves? Oh, I was going to use AI to analyze our transcript to surface what the same things that we keep hitting on.
Oh shit, that'd be cool,
right? Nothing against using AI for this kind of thing.
Yeah. Also, Nounish Professor, we're pirates on this podcast. I'll probably recommend some crimes at some point. Sorry.
What did we say that was a blatant crime? Well, what did I say by accident that's a blatant crime?
And also, if it's a crime to make things up and post it on the internet, there's a lot of people that have been elected and not elected that are just doing that right now. So I don't really feel that bad about it.
Yeah, I think in the US it's pretty lenient unless you are a paid influencer. I think that's where like
the FTC they're shutting down the FTC. It doesn't even matter anymore.
There is no more governing bodies who would care, sadly. So we are on our own, which I don't think is a bad thing. Like I think we shouldn't trust a centralized source to help guide us into safety either.
I mean, I think it doesn't make sense in an era where a huge chunk of the population didn't grow up with the internet. Like we have I mean, that's why old people get scammed so much. It's because they cannot fathom a world where a robot can call their phone and trick them into giving their social security number.
Right. Which is sadly very, very common. A lot of content related to this. The what's it called? Scam or something? Do you know what I'm talking about? There's a lot of YouTubers who like pretend to be old ladies and scam the scammer backs. Oh, Scammer Payback. That's the name of the channel.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I've seen that. I've seen one where a guy finds the call center in India that's doing a bunch of scams, and dude, I love.
So now the professor said defamation is still a thing, but like telling you false health information, I don't think it's a crime because it is very hard to prove. And certain very high up elected officials have done the same thing with no consequences.
I mean, I don't know about you, but I put sunlight into my veins, and that really helped me out with the big old C word.
What is the big old C word?
I can't say it. We'll get demonetized. Just kidding. We're not monetized. That was a recommendation. Bleach in your veins and then sunlight in your veins.
Oh, that's big old Trump. I was thinking of something much more vulgar.
Where's your head at, Kristen? You're still on the muscle mommy conversation.
I'm still on the muscle mommy conversation.
Shame. There's a granny AI for this.
Yeah, so I think we need take immune systems more than anything else, right? Like speaking of the C word, I think of it very similar to the human body immune system. It's like I think most people need to reject most takes because we are bombarded with them these days.
How do you reject takes?
Just don't believe it. I know this is not helpful. It's very hard because sometimes it's really, really subtle, but like.
Well, I mean, you need a mental model of the world. You can't go through your day without having some assumptions.
But don't update it too aggressively.
Well, okay, right? So say you're under 18 and you're growing up and you're trying to build your model of the world and like.
Oh, I don't know. I think kids are screwed. Like this is.
Okay, moral of the story, we're fucked.
Already fully formed prefrontal cortices. I have no idea how to help children. I think they're all very smart and they will figure it out and they will save us. But in the meantime, for adults who have already survived the world without the internet and now have to survive the world with the internet, I think we need to accept less. I think that's just true, like especially for my parents too, right? It's like they were trying to tell me that according to TV in Malaysia, which is actually Chinese, like mainland China, like TV propaganda, that like we are all dying by the droves of the flu.
That's true. I died last week. I'm back,
yeah. So here's the thing. I'm like, well, technically it's true. Everyone, like every season, people will like unfortunately pass away from the flu. And then I was trying to argue with my mom that like technically I can tell her that in like the US there is going to be a news program saying the same thing is happening in Malaysia, which is totally not true. And then also my own argument evolved because I was like, well, technically if this is true, I wouldn't know the news because we're no longer reporting on this kind of thing. So,
that is true.
So then I was like, oh, dang it. Technically, maybe she does have the most accurate info. But like we're in a world where like, especially when it comes to public data, that is being taken away from us. Sure. So like no matter what, like I have to be very careful when I make any claims now that's related to science. Like where am I even getting the most updated information about this? So I feel like in a way I'm practicing like caring for others closer to the medieval times where it's like, okay, you have no information. Like you have your body. I care about you. I've heard about these things that are almost hearsay, but they are like low risk. So it might be worth trying. Like,
so, okay. I have a smorgasbord of takes on that, Kristen. The first one being, it's not the same thing because we have the scientific method and that's like a different worldview.
One of my hot takes is that people overuse the scientific method, especially growy podcasters.
I think that is potentially true, and a direct shot across my back.
It's predicated upon good data collection.
That's true, but the issue isn't with the scientific method; it's with its application, potentially over application, and so like putting yourself in the same position as like a peasant who literally does not think logically because that's not how they think about the world.
I think
diminishing you.
That is this is my hot take. I think we shit on the previous the peasants too much. They were much smarter than we think they are. The medieval times, the Victorian people. Like if you actually study, like of course mine is still secondary to like Victorian influencers that I do watch. But they figured out a lot of stuff without the help of a lot of instruments and tooling that we have now.
Yeah, I'm not saying that they didn't figure out the world, like, but we know more things now.
Like, that much smarter than the peasants, like the average person.
I think that you have access to a library of things that they could not fathom.
Correct.
Like, and so like you diminishing yourself is doing a disservice to you and to the people that you can help because you are trying to be a good steward of like knowledge.
I'm not diminishing myself. I'm elevating people of the past.
I mean, they don't care.
But I think there's a lot of like super Lindy stuff that we can get from the past that the American culture doesn't like to do.
Like what?
Like traditional Chinese medicine.
I mean,
or even like people of your culture, the Appalachian like folk medicine. I think it's super legit.
Yeah, I'm not
I'm
shitting
not
on
saying
that
you're from
in any degree.
Appalachia.
We're just
I made a huge assumption. When did your family first come over to the to the United States of America?
I mean, I've had family in Tennessee since pre-Civil War.
Oh, okay, okay. All
Yeah.
right.
And
Wait, does the
so
Appalachian Mountains extend to there?
yeah, Appalachian Mountains go from like the Appalachian Trail goes from the Northeast all the way down to Georgia.
Oh, okay, okay, cool.
Yep.
All right, so I didn't completely
Yep.
miss.
But we're talking about takes and take immunity, not physical remedies for things. And so like
Oh, I was
you
doing a meta take about ancient cultures and our respect of them thereof. But
Yeah.
yes, the immune
But,
system
like-
was the original thing.
like you drop the average medieval peasant, give them TikTok for an hour, and
Mhm.
it probably nukes their brain, right? Like that's like a reasonable thing to assume is that would happen.
Yes, but that's the same analogy as me dropping you into the future. But I wouldn't
Yes.
say that you're dumb.
I wasn't saying that they're dumb.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah. But the anyway, the point here is that like you trying to be careful with your takes, I think is in the same vein as religions that proselytize and have missionaries versus religions that don't proselytize. The ones that go out and like actively seek to recruit new followers are going to propagate and spread more than the ones that don't. And since you are deliberately trying to be more careful with what you put out into the world, your, I would argue, like very intelligent things are not going as far as I think that they should because you are trying to be responsible as a result.
I know. That's always the downside.
But so like the issue is that we're taking takes as being a permanent thing that weighs on you like rocks in your rucksack that you got to carry forever, when in fact, every single take that anybody ever has is really a transient thing that is their best guess at like categorizing something right now.
So the evangelical thing is a good analogy, right? Because like those
that's what I was looking for, evangelical, yeah.
Yeah, those who present as most certain about their takes are most rewarded in modern society, right? Like because people, you know, in general, like want to be reassured.
Yeah, I mean,
like,
I think
that's the biggest appeal of evangelical type things. It's like it's really certain. It's like if you believe in this thing, then you are saved.
People want to be led. That's like a fundamental belief that I have.
They want a security of being led. I don't think they technically want to be led.
I mean, most people want to be able to point to somebody and be like, that's the right answer. And the right answer comes from a person.
But here's the thing. I would love to build a community of people who don't want to be led.
Yeah, but a bunch of people that say they don't want to be led would like to be in a community led by a person.
I think that is, you know, there is some, of course, like some leadership, like someone has to drive the boat. The boat is not going anywhere. Yeah. But I think like that's the subtle art is like people that I admire are not the kind of people who impose their takes on others.
That doesn't mean a cult of personality doesn't come out.
Yeah. I don't think it's on purpose, but they naturally have it, so therefore they can get away with not on the surface not imposing their takes, but their cult personality is so strong that it kind of works anyway.
I mean, this is the tyranny of structuralistness conversation, where like any organization that doesn't have explicit rules ends up having implicit rules that benefit a cabal at the middle of the group, which is why like explicit rules end up being the thing that makes things more fair a lot of the time, depending on how the rules are structured. Crazy Frog, so good TV shows, to, like Severance.
Rules that are more open, I guess. Because
porous.
Yeah, or they are about. It's sort of like what is it like if you have no rules against tyranny, then in a way you're endorsing it, sort of situations.
If you're tolerant of intolerance, then you end up with default intolerance.
Exactly. Like I think that's the line is that you have no immune system and like no clear take of some kind that's broad enough to encompass everybody, then like another body with a more clear take would take over anyway.
Yeah. I mean, like there's a legibility piece of that, of like just people need to be able to understand what you're saying. There's kind of a proof of correctness thing that like eventually gets figured out. I don't know. Like the only reason I bring it up is we say a lot of things. We generally believe them to be true as we say them. But the thing that I think we do differently than a lot of other people is we always leave space to have a better answer tomorrow. And I think we try to explicitly leave that space of like, hey, this is what I think about making content or health or whatever today. Right. And then tomorrow when I learn something, that take might change. And that's a feature, not a bug.
So one thing that I feel I have a stronger opinion on compared to my friends is the hypocritical take. Like I noticed that there are some people, like influencers on the internet, which if you judge them by their behavior, clearly they are not masters or like able to do what they say is the thing to do, but yet that is often ignored. And I mean, this is like across like
can you make that tangible for me? I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, like for example, like the Huberman situation, where he talks a lot about like dopamine and how you need to be disciplined and blah blah blah, but his personal life does not indicate him following any of his own advice. But yet I feel like it was a very split, like dividing,
like him
situation.
Dating a bunch of women thing.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, it could be like, of course, like, it could be the article is a smear job. Like, there's a lot of things that I don't have insight into. But then my reaction to like that piece of information is like, well, like clearly you're not able to implement some of this advice into your own life. Therefore, my belief in your ability to or the practical application of your information is much decreased. I still think his stuff is really useful as a library of like papers and stuff like that. But however, I don't think he actually got that much of a hit. I think people are still listening to him.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't have a dog in this fight. I don't like. I've seen Huberman on the internet, but I don't like consume that stuff.
I see that Crazy Frog said that. To be fair, on Huberman, if he could date 7 women at the same time at 50, I want what he is taking.
That's kind of what I'm saying.
So maybe that's the angle I'm missing. I feel like I'm also biased because for some reason I know someone who knows one of the women that the situation happened to. So then I was like, oh, it turns out it is a real situation. Like that's the only thing I know.
Yeah, I mean, I fully believe that is what happened. And the way that I kind of view it is, and maybe this is what frustrates a lot of people. I guess not as many people, if people are still in his camp, is like somebody can be a dirtbag and still be right. You know what I mean? like
that's not fair.
It's totally fair. It's the fairest thing. That's what being right means.
No.
Like we kind of have an issue. Like, I'm not advocating to not be a good person. I certainly think it's well worth your time to do. But there are plenty of people who are bags of dog shit in like throughout history that were generally correct about whatever the thing that they really cared about was.
But I think what my frustration is that I feel like I know plenty of people who are actually good and like not hypocritical, but because they are more soft in their takes, because they tend to not want to impose their takes, they are not as well known.
Like, I'm still not sold on this. Like, I agree with you that there are people out there that are hypocritical. I would actually put us in that camp because we talk about organizing our lives.
We're not hypocritical at all.
I mean, sometimes we are. We say like, hey, this is how I organize my life. And then I look around at my room and I'm like, I'm not organized at all.
But we disclose that. That's a difference. It's just about disclosure.
Yeah. But like, I don't see, like, I would need a more specific claim about Huberman to be like, oh, he's a hypocrite in this situation. Because like,
I see. So you're thinking I'm too broadly applying the hypocrite label.
Like, I think you're applying it to a situation with a guy that you just like don't really like how he's moving through the world. But like, as Crazy Frog points out, like by all accounts, he does seem to have the health and energy to juggle his web of whatever.
Right. Oh, Tudorizer is a great question. Do you think hypocrisy is intentional or acknowledged? I think it slips out. I think like a lot of us, including myself, we tend to want to create content that's really projecting and like
100%.
the opposite of how like some corner of ourselves feel, because we're trying to compensate. We're like, oh no, like this is how I really am. I perceive myself to be really am. Let me make some explicit stuff that is the opposite of that. And I think that also explains a lot of the political circus behavior too. It's like, why is it that people are like extremely hypocritical? It's because subconsciously we all do that.
Well, I mean, so I think that there's a standards problem. I think I think there should be space for hypocrisy in some aspects of what you put out into the world. Because if something is true, if something's a truth or an aspirational truth, it's probably hard to accomplish. But just because something's hard to accomplish and you show up and don't achieve it every day doesn't mean it's not a truth or like a truism or a Lindy thing about the world that like you might want to take into consideration. Actually, I'll say if it's hard to achieve, but people are still trying to, it's even more important to talk about it. And so
you mean like kind of like the Jordan Peterson situation?
Let's get that in a second. But so like J.R.R. Tolkien, like I saw some clips of J.R.R. Tolkien a little while ago, and he basically is just like, every story of humanity is really a story about death, because all of humanity is basically a struggle against the unjust presence of an end to what you're doing. That's like a terrible misquote, but it's basically the energy of what he's saying. And he's like, I don't know about that, if that's true for all stories, but it's certainly what Lord of the Rings is about, which he can obviously talk about because he wrote it. And focusing on like the idea of trying to defy death is inherently hypocritical because none of us can, but it is still a universal thing that we all kind of experience. Like our health journey is in defiance of death. And like we're gonna be ultimately hypocrites because we're gonna die about this health thing, but that doesn't mean it's not like a worthwhile thing to talk about. This is very different than preaching anti-homosexuality than being a closeted Republican representative or whatever. Like I think that's a very different thing. Crazy Frog, what are you talking? Oh,
I think that's Jordan Peterson.
JD Vance.
I guess.
JD Vance, sleeper Russian agent.
Had shock therapy in Russia. That sounded familiar.
I don't know. Sounds like a not fun time. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I think he did go through a really rough time. But yeah, it's sort of like that kind of thing. I'm talking about, okay, specifically with Jordan Peterson thing. I mean, specifically, there was an interview that was done with him where his whole thing is about his book of rules for life or something, right? Where one of them is like, make your bed or whatever. And it was a scene where his entire room is like freaking messy. Like it was extremely chaotically messy. And I actually had many thoughts about it because I was like thinking, does he not perceive it? Because technically he could hire someone to clean it up for him. It's not that hard. So that was kind of weird. But I was wondering whether it was meant to be poetic to be like, here, it's okay. like I don't follow my own rules all the time. Or am I supposed to interpret it as like, well, that's kind of weirdly hypocritical. Like those are the scenarios where like, because a lot of people revere him beyond just his writing and all of that, like they take him as like a thought leader. That's where I'm questioning, am I missing something? Like, do people not see that? Isn't it kind of weird that he doesn't seem to follow his own rules? Of course, like, he also had like really bad depression and had to go through treatment and addiction and all of that.
Yeah. The Cardinals back, so I'm enjoying that part of nature.
Should I be insulted that Cameron always seems to be more interested in outdoor birds than what I'm saying?
Look, I'll let everybody draw their own conclusions about why I'm rolling around. Okay, so there's a bunch of different things that play with the Jordan Peterson thing. Again, I don't have a dog in the fight. I've read the 12 rules.
You have? I have not. I haven't even read the book. So like, I'm the biggest hypocrite of all.
I mean, I'm a white dude veteran with a beard. I get served Jordan Peterson content for sure. And so like
Asian women are into Jordan Peterson. It's like a huge demographic.
That's interesting. I mean,
yes, which I also don't really understand.
Does it align with cultural values?
I think so. I think it aligns a lot with the whole like Chinese like disciplined life sort of thing, maybe.
Yeah. And so like I do think
my friend did translate the Jordan Peterson book into the official Chinese version. So
interesting.
Again, I don't want to be too critical. I'm just mystified.
Burn the books. No, like it's one of those things where there's a cult of personality thing. There's a my team is better than your team thing. And like those two things, ignoring the rest of it, which we'll get into, but those two things make it really, really hard for people to admit that somebody that they like is wrong. You obviously see it on, frankly, both the Republican and Democrat side. Like there's plenty to criticize about leaders on both, not equating the two, but that's just kind of like the truth. And nobody wants their team to lose. And when somebody that you've already ideologically decided isn't on your team, then criticizes your team, it's like extra painful. So there's like that element to it. So I'm sure the like his bed was messy thing is very easily liberals are overblowing this thing. Like that's like the default line. That's just a very human response. There's also the poetic thing that you're talking about of like, hey, just because it's a rule doesn't mean that you can't be a human. Like if you can't be a hypocrite in the, space that you live in sometimes, like what's the point of living? Maybe some hardcore Stoics would disagree with that. I also think there's it's probably not that deep kind of thing going on, because somebody who's like genuinely living a life that they want to live probably isn't overanalyzing every move that they do. I don't know if that's his case. Again, I don't really like Jordan Peterson. I think his voice is kind of annoying if I'm being petty about it. But the long and short of it is it feels like it was a big thing for you, and I bet it just didn't even register for most of the people that you're confused at why they didn't register.
Yeah. So I feel like my conclusion from all of this is that to be stronger in takes, I need to be more comfortable with perceived hypocrisy. Or like, there's a whole thing that I told you about Peter Thiel.
Yeah.
Again, this might be a misquote. Like,
no, I've read roughly what you're talking about.
Yeah, like like he's actually looking out for people who are extremely hypocritical in a way.
Yeah, I mean, people that can hold opposing viewpoints at the same time. Yep. Yeah, it's like if you can live with the dissonance within yourself, you can maintain a bunch of things that might seemingly not work together, but like ultimately do. Really, starting a company is living in dissonance, because you believe a thing to be true in the future, it's not true now, and you're trying to like make that thing happen. I think it's less about being comfortable with hypocrisy, Kristen, and more about like, I mean, doing the thing that you said earlier and not taking in other takes. Like, why would you doubt yourself? Other people are going to take care of that for you.
That's true. But like, as you know, my conundrum is that my take is that more takes need to be more nuanced, which is itself a bit of a self-negating. And I don't know how to resolve that. Or maybe I haven't figured out a way to say it more strongly.
I mean, I think two things can be true. I think a lot of discourse would be benefited by having a more nuanced approach to whatever the issue is, and less of like a my team versus your team. But also, most humans are not and will never be primed to have that nuanced conversation. Like, accepting those two things and operating in a world that frankly has a bigger vote than you or I do is the thing that I think needs to happen if you want to achieve your goal.
I'm gonna write 12 rules. Is it 12?
I'm gonna do 13 because I need more rules.
No, 13 is an unlucky number.
Good. That's rule 13. Go against unlucky's. Go against superstition.
That goes very deeply against my ingrained doctrine of my mom freaking out over the number 13.
Tradition is just peer pressure from dead people, Kristen.
I know, or alive people who are still hovering over you. Okay. I think that's interesting. Now I'm like, I should probably read that Jordan Peterson book, because now I'm curious. What are the other 12, like 11
Just
rules?
look up the rules. Don't even. I mean, like, I'm not advocating for not reading, but like, no, if you don't like somebody's takes, you should know them backwards and forwards.
I know. That's so much work.
Yes.
Oh, and I think that's the other, like the last thing, right? Is like, which I think we brought up maybe a few weeks ago. It's like it takes like 10 times more energy to dispute the wrong fact than to create the wrong fact in the first place. I feel like right now we're in in a state where there's constant generation of takes that may or may not be accurate, and it takes way too much time. Like, for example, even for me to read this Jordan Peterson book, which I will, but then it's like I can't be doing that for every wrong take. I'll never come up with my original take. How does that work?
I mean, you just got to rebut in the same spirit that the dumb take was in. It's like, oh, they said this? No, he's an idiot. Clearly he's an idiot. And then you just move on.
Ad hominem?
Yeah. So what? This is the thing that's missing from I like non-alt-right media is like, no, that guy's an idiot. Why would you listen to anything he says?
Oh, right. That is one of the criticisms of the left. You're right.
Like, if you have this like this pedantic need to rebut every point, you've already lost because you completely missed the point. Like you were playing a different game than the person who is frankly eating your lunch. It's stupid. Just be like, no, that guy's an idiot. He wanted to inject bleach into his veins. You know that. Quit getting mad about it, and then do your thing. What's up, Dominic? Thanks for dropping into the show.
You're just in time to hear about. Oh man!
If you don't like somebody, call them an idiot. Be rude.
But the funny thing is that I feel like you're really polite on the civil internet, and then when you do think someone's an idiot, you privately telegram me that information.
Look, I'm a pragmatic idiot.
So here's a practical example. Sometimes you and I encounter takes on certain purple parts of the internet that we both don't say anything.
Yeah. So why obviously, like society gets a vote, your communities you're in gets a vote. But if you're a person that has takes on the internet and like that's your thing, which I don't think that's our thing, is having like strong takes. That's why we named this episode Takes, because we don't normally do this. Like there's a room that you live in. And so like this is me talking to the people on the internet that are basically getting lost in the maze that you're talking. It's honestly me talking to us a little bit. We have communities we like being a part of. If somebody else was calling somebody an idiot, which like doesn't really happen, then I think I'd be more comfortable doing that. But let's just be super clear. That was a comment on the Republican versus Democrat internet, period, full stop. For me, at least. I think
I'm trying to recall an example of where you had a strong reaction to someone's take, but also anonymize it enough to bring it up.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't think people have strong takes on Farcaster often.
Oh, I know what it is. Okay. So it's an example where someone expresses a take that indicates that they have never been in an economically stressful situation. I think that's the one that both of us get like annoyed about. But however, I think I don't say anything because
that's a clear power differential.
Oh,
that's why. Fine. That takes a full power differential if it's the person I think we're talking about.
Yes, but then like I don't say anything because I feel like, well, if my premise of my argument is that, oh, you have not experienced like poverty to the level that I have experienced or something like that, then that's really hard because like I can't be like, you haven't experienced it, and it's not going to give that other person magically an experience. So then I'm like, okay, like should I say something or don't say anything?
Yeah. Well, I mean, so power differential aside, if you let's be super.
Are we talking power in terms of like social media power or
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So like if somebody,
do you think you have less power? I don't think you have less power actually.
I definitely think I do.
Oh.
I am kind of on the ropes of Farcaster if I'm being like super real. Or at least that's where I perceive
like
myself.
In a boxing situation where you're like already punched out and you're leaning on the ropes.
Yeah.
I don't think so, but okay.
Just the nature of the platform. But like the situation you're talking about is somebody's take being informed by basically being like a trust fund kid is kind of the energy that we're talking about. or something similar to that. I think I'm not a good player of the struggle Olympics because I've had plenty of advantages in my life, but I have had the unique experience of like leading people from like straight up all walks of life, like literal trust fund soldiers, like that joined the army because I thought it'd be fun, to people that like to a white kid from Helen, Georgia that didn't meet like a black person until they went to basic training, like that kind of difference in upbringing. And so like I really care about people. I try to be as empathetic as I can, just because I felt like I didn't get a ton of empathy growing up, and I didn't understand people growing up. Like I really just didn't understand why people did the things that they do. And so I've kind of spent a lot of my life trying to understand that.
And the show continues.
The show continues. Like basically all of OK Banger for me is like
I'm actually even worse. So I think this is really funny.
I want to hear what you mean by that. But basically, like when I see that, it's really hard when other people don't see the same thing you do, because they also aren't coming at it from like the context of experiences that you have.
Right.
And so you can post about it, you can talk about it. It's frankly less powerful to share other people's stories than your own. Like that's why the advice for a lot of people is to like elevate other voices versus like telling their story for them. Like in terms of like reducing power and access asymmetry online. And so I try to do that. DMs are actually a really powerful way of building a coalition of opinions in an area where there is very public displays of power. So there's a very pragmatic aspect to it versus like a head-on fight, especially in an insular community like Farcaster. I actually think it is one of the more optimal social moves versus just like attacking on the feed, because some people are just averse to conflict in general. In fact, I would say a lot of Farcasters are averse to conflict in general.
Yeah, me.
But maybe that's cope. Yeah, no, I
feel like, is there actually a like ethical responsibility for me to express a take from my own personal experience when I feel like, oh, like that's a relatively privileged take? Again, like it's not a fault of person, it's just, you know, that environment they grew up with.
Where's the responsibility coming from?
So sort of like speak up for the little people, like for, you know, like I don't know whether this is true or not, you know, like maybe this is too savior complex, but there is a feeling of like, oh, if I don't say it's sort of like, if I don't say something, then how can I expect someone else to say something, that kind of thing.
Do you expect somebody else to say something?
I would like there to be.
Okay,
right?
but that's very different than expecting. Like you are beating yourself up for a hypothetical that you don't even believe.
I think it only makes sense if everyone does it, maybe.
Okay, well that's never going to happen. So that's multipluralism, baby. Like that's just like what a multipolar society is.
Yeah, and then Cool Beans is agreeing with you. Like I'm making assumptions that they are the little man in the situation.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that there are visceral and real power differentials in the world. Like the existence of people that have less power and more power, like that's factual in my understanding. It just
brings up like, you know, what's the most courageous version of myself do. Here's the thing: it's not even about courage; it's about energy usage. This is where I feel like a little bit more selfish. It's like, as you know, it takes time and energy to debate someone on the internet, and I feel like it is less good use of my time, and I would rather build a solution than to debate a point.
Well, that's a completely different discussion than we were having before.
Oh, okay.
Like energy usage and is it the right thing to do? Those are like it felt like your gut reaction was the right thing to do or not conversation, and then you rationalized with the energy usage, which both like it honestly kind of comes back to like, do you have an objective moral framework for the universe, or is it fully subjective for everybody, Kristen? It always comes back to this. If you have a moral scaffolding that you think is like objectively right, then you got to follow it, or else you are betraying your values.
I thought, well, okay, being a hypocrite is good tension.
That's part of my subjective framework of the world is like, hey, being a human is totally fine and you shouldn't beat yourself up for it because the other guy certainly isn't. Like for me, there are certain things that I do feel compelled to speak out because they like matter to me. A lot of them are veterans issues.
Oh yeah, you did some great ones recently.
Yeah, so I posted that takedown of Amazon, which is a bummer because like I wanted to believe what is probably the Amazon myth of hiring all those veterans. Retention numbers don't lie, and they do very much.
But is it worse than the average retention numbers or on par compared to civilians?
I don't know. He didn't go into that.
Because technically, if they're the same as civilians, then they're technically not worse.
I think it can still, in a vacuum, be a useful lens because if you are touting you are hiring 100,000 veterans and only 5% of them like make it through a filter, like Amazon's turnover is not 95% every year. Yeah, but like you don't get to market something that is, you know, spiritually unaligned with the group. It's straight up exploitation. You know, it could be veterans. It you know, could be underrepresented like minorities. It you know, it could be any class of people. For me, it's closer to me because I am a veteran, right? And so but yeah, like I don't think you have to speak out about things. Sometimes the world's a better place when you do, but also you got a life to live.
Well, I need to look out for the next time where I feel compelled to say something, and then we can reevaluate whether I am a hypocrite or not.
I mean, like ultimately,
if you have now embrace, since it seems like being a hypocrite is a part of life, according to Cool Beans.
Well, I mean, just the enemy, the people that do the things that you don't like the people that do the things that make the world worse, they're not worried about being hypocrites. So you are giving yourself extra hoops to jump through because you think it's the right thing to do, or you have some like compounding trauma in your life or whatever. And so not to overuse the word.
But I think like, isn't it a good ideal to be consistent? I feel like it's not such a high bar, is it?
I think that,
or at least like, you know, when one is being a hypocrite, I feel like this is the thing that I just automatically do is like when I'm being a hypocrite, I call it out first, so it is really clear that I am aware.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you're right with yourself, like just keep doing that. But the like you don't need to hamstring yourself. I think Treisel's right is that there's nothing more punk than changing your mind.
Oh, I do like that saying.
Like
hopefully changing one's mind for the better of the world and not worse, though.
I mean, straight up, it's the paladin debuff that we talk about all the time, like in our chats.
Oh, right, like, that's one of our
so, rules. Chat for context. We kind of talk about like the good guys have an inherent debuff on all their skills because they're living up to like a higher standard or a harder standard than other people have to do. I think part of that is pretty reasonable. Of like, hey, rules are what let the social contract that society has like function. But a lot of the rules are just rules that don't really make anything better. And so like,
what do you call it when you cancel a debuff in like a game?
Removing a status condition.
Oh, okay. I think that one of our status condition. That's one of our okay banger consistencies. I'm writing it down.
Yeah, I mean, like we're all, you know, crossing the river by grasping at stones, and you kind of like know it when you see it. I mean, like being a good person is like corn. I hate that the internet makes us censor this now, but we need distribution.
Oh, I thought you were referring to the band.
No. No. But now I'm gonna listen to some Korn later today. But being a good person's like Korn, like you know it when you see it, and you're like, it's about striving, which used to be our little quip for the show. Like you're just trying to be better. You know you're not going to be better. That's why most religions have forgiveness as like a foundational tenet, because they knew thousands of years ago that like people were going to fail. And that's fine. And that's like a Lindy thing that happens. And just keep on working, because even if you do a terrible thing today, Kristen, you still gotta kind of wake up tomorrow.
Yes, I agree.
And I think you'll be okay. Just like be
All
less
right.
anxious about it, you know?
Yes, yes. So to reveal the meta, Cameron and I talked about how, oh no, sometimes when we are like converging on agreement towards the end of the show, the energy also kind of dips. And I'm like,
What?
oh, we are at this moment right now where the energy is kind of dipped.
I mean, let's ramp it back up or close the show out.
All right.
We should play one of those phone games with stuff on our head. Oh, actually, we can see ourselves on it. I don't think that would work.
I don't think that will work. And it also reminds me of Ellen DeGeneres.
Okay, scratch that, strike that, reverse it.
Yeah.
But thanks everybody for showing up. We had a good blast. Dominic, thanks for being a first-time viewer. And we'll get some clips of this up. Maybe you'll be in the clips. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already, so you can see them. Get notified. Put on the bell.
Put on the bell.
Put on the bell.
All righty.
Ring that bell.